Welcome to the Mindset Game podcast. I'm Verit Kogan, and I'm delighted to introduce you to Tony Burgess. Tony has trained and coached business leaders, entrepreneurs, and teams on powerful mental and emotional fitness techniques to help them tap into their full potential. He and his partner, Julie French, are co-founders of the Academy of High Achievers. Tony is recognized for his expertise in neuro-linguistic programming, also known as NLP, DISC, and havening techniques. In fact, he is the head of trainer training for the havening techniques. And that is how I first met Tony, because he was one of the facilitators in my certification training a few years ago. Tony and Julie are the co-authors of two books, Pink Bucket Thinking and Beliefs and How to Change Them for Good. And Tony, it is such a pleasure and an honor to have you here on the show. Really excited for you to speak with our audience members a little bit about beliefs and the power of beliefs, because that's kind of the essence of this podcast. So first of all, welcome.
Thank you. Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you. And so how about we start off with a little bit about beliefs? What exactly are beliefs?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we could look at this through different lenses. But yeah, if we keep things simple, I like to keep things really simple. And basically, it's an idea that we take to be true. You know, it's something that seems real as we notice this belief circulating. It's something that seems real, and we act accordingly.
Thank you. And so where do these beliefs come from?
Yeah, many and varied. I mean, we've got all kinds of shapers on our beliefs. Our own direct experience is one, but also we pick them up from all those people who we see as in some way authoritative in our lives in our early years. So our parenting, our schooling, also people who are in our friendship groups that matter. All of these have some impact, and of course, we're getting it off the TV and things that surround us day by day. They're all shapers of our beliefs.
And I'm curious, what do you see as some of the more limiting beliefs that people may want to change?
Well, people are absolutely magnificent. They're just absolutely magnificent. And yet, what happens is that we get these lessons in life that have the gates kind of closing on our magnificence in ways where it's like the treasure's not getting through. It's there, but we're not getting into our experience. We're not getting into our behaviors that lead to our outcomes, our connections with other people, and so on, with certain lessons being gate closing. Now, some people have really tricky experiences in life that slam those gates shut in such a way that they remain shut in many contexts for a long time. And the tragedy of that is that people start to believe that the impoverished version that's kind of trickling through the cracks in the gates, they think that's it. That's who they are. And it couldn't be further from the truth. Other people are lucky enough to have had an experience in life where the gates are open a lot of the time, and they're getting the best of them flowing more of the time. And of course, most of us are somewhere where one context slams them shut and another context, throws them open, and somewhere in between they're half shut and half open. But it affects what happens next. And for me, it's about see the treasure in people, first of all, and really help speak to that treasure. It'll leak into your energy when you're focused on the treasure rather than the gates. And it's like an invitation for the gates to open and for the shining to get through again. Well, people's beliefs are often really, really impactful on keeping gates open or throwing them open wide. And there's a hit parade here. Top of the hit parade as a gate closing is I'm not good enough. People have a million ways of, saying that to themselves. Ultimately, the one we come across most often in our work coaching training, in corporate world, is I'm not good enough. I'm going to get found out. I'm an imposter. Who am I to? And it's damaging, not just to self, but it's damaging to the organizations and the people in those organizations that could hugely benefit from someone actually getting out their own way and really accessing their full potential, their full unique blend of treasure that no one else can bring.
Thank you, Tony. And, this reminds me, just yesterday, I was doing some belief work with some clients, and one of them, very, very successful woman, owns actually multiple companies. And, we were working on her two beliefs, one that she can't have it all, and then the second one that she's worthy of having it all, which of course are interrelated. And so I'm curious, what inspired you and Julie to write this beautiful book?
Well, it's quite interesting that most personal development books out there in the world, and I'm going to say something that shows my age a little bit here, all those personal development tapes that I listened to in the early years, tapes, what are they? What we found is that there were some really consistent messages with the sort of success messages out there. One is really stretch yourself out of your comfort zone, go for it, think big, push yourself, these kinds of messages. I thought that really appealed to me. I thought, yeah, there's more we can experience and achieve. And then there was also this other message, which was about, you've got to believe. You've got to believe in yourself. You've got to believe it's possible. You've got to believe. If you're going to be successful, you've got to believe. And of course, that's, again, very appealing. And as a message, it's simple and it's powerful. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense to me. And yet, when we push ourselves way out of our comfort zone and we really go for the stretch, that's actually where, by definition, some doubts creep in. And where actually we may not fully believe yet in ourselves or in the journey or in the possibility of actually accomplishing what we've really stretched ourselves to achieve. And so I thought, well, it's okay. We'll go to the chapter or the bit of the podcast or whatever where it says, if you happen to feel the stretch and you don't believe in yourself, this is what to do. And there was remarkably little available, actually, that was easy to understand and apply quickly, for the average person who wants to work on themselves. And we love stuff that we can offer it for people to work on themselves. And so there was a gap. And just saying you got to believe, you got to believe, you got to believe isn't enough if you happen to not believe in that moment. So we've given some really simple steps that when people follow them, they can notice the shifts happening as they apply them.
First of all, thank you for writing this book, Beliefs and How to Change Them for Good, because I agree with you. There's a lot of stuff out there about what we could and should be doing, but not so much of the how, in simple ways that we can do, and oftentimes that we can do ourselves. And so what is that process? If you were to give us kind of a big picture and maybe even some specific tips for our listeners to utilize right away, what can we do?
Sure. I mean, actually, the groundwork, I think, is really important. Sometimes we don't give enough credit to the groundwork before we dive into a process. And that can be simple stuff, again, because I like simple stuff that works. The first one, though, is to get people thinking about, well, look, if you're going to do some belief change here, what is it you actually want to achieve that's making it worthwhile doing this belief change? Because very often people will answer that kind of question with a lot of things that they don't want or they're sick and tired of. So it'll be like, well, I'm sick of being stressed. I'm really, really tired of messing up. I'm really getting annoyed with myself about procrastinating. I just don't want that anymore. And so they know a lot about what they don't want anymore. And that's fine as a motivator to take them to a point where it's like, I need to do something. And once they've had that motivation, it's really important to flip it around and give a target to have our inner team actually focus on. It's like, if we're going to be rallying them to a cause, it's a little bit like Google. If we put into Google, I don't want information about Spanish holiday villas. I really don't want information about Spanish holiday villas. The keywords Spanish holiday villas are going to lead a lot of information on the very thing we don't want. And our brain's the same. It's like, our inner team is, what's the keywords for today? I don't want stress, don't want, So just to be able to, in that moment, say, well, okay, if I'm going to go to the trouble of having a belief change, what is it for? What do I want as an outcome, experientially, in terms of the things that we might see, hear, feel, achieve, conversations we'll be having later, just putting it on the map. What is this for? What do I want? And that's So simple. It seems like such a simple idea. People who've done personal development will be a familiar idea as well. Really, really worth just reminding, though, on that background little piece of work at the beginning.
Yeah, thank you.
And then around that, there's again, it's kind of before any belief change as such, but it's surprising how just pointing in the right direction can give a new lens on what it's all about and what I'm about, and where am I going, and what do I want. That is work in itself. And the second step is really nice and straightforward. It is a little bit of a beliefs audit. What is going on in there that relates to what I do want? What's going on? Now, sometimes we don't use the word beliefs as such, because if we don't have that long to talk to people about what's the difference between a belief and a thought, or an attitude or whatever, it's like, look, let's just loosen it all up. That inner stuff, that stuff that's circulating in here, whatever way it shows up, because we've got different levels of belief, from like purpose ones and identity level ones to just beliefs about, how things might work today, or who this person is, or what they might be thinking. We've got all these different levels. So most inner stuff is belief based at one level or another. And so to say, look, let's just notice the inner stuff that's in there, and notice, and this is a question we're not trained in life to ask, what of the inner stuff is helpful and what of the inner stuff is unhelpful. What we tend to do is defend the truth of our inner stuff. We have our inner stuff, it seems so real, as it's circulating, I'm experiencing it, I'm even creating movies about it, it just seems so real. And we don't often say to ourselves, well, look, all of our inner stuff is heavily filtered. How about I ask a different question, which is more pragmatic, like, is it working for me or not? Is this thought stream, is this idea, is this expectation, is this assumption, is this belief really working for me, given what I want to achieve? So if we took one example here, just really simple, if I want to achieve a remarkable outcome, let's just put it at that chunked up, something amazing and remarkable and worthwhile, and my inner stuff says, you're worthless, useless, not up to the job. We just ask the question, given what you want to achieve, is that going to keep your gates open, or is it going to close the gates and have your resources more locked away? It's a simple question, but we're not asking about truth value. It seems so real when someone says, I'm useless, I'm hopeless, I'm no good, or whatever. Let's park that. Everything we think and experience that's generated by ourselves seems so real. So let's, instead of arguing the point, let's just ask if it's serving us or not.
I think these are great starting points, because unless we know what it is that we specifically want as an outcome, right? As you said, what will we see, hear, feel, and so on once we've got it, once that is successfully completed, we might not induce certain, thoughts to emerge, right? And then once we're conscious of those thoughts, I love that you're saying, let's pause and say, how is this serving me? Is this going to help open those gates or not? And so what do we do when we become conscious of some thought patterns, some of that inner stuff that is not serving us?
Yeah, I tend to get people to notice which of the ones that you've brought to mind are the most unhelpfully impactful. In other words, it's like, if only that one could change, I think that might change everything. There's a kind of domino effect that goes with the pivotal ones that bring down other ones with it. And so we start with the ones that intuitively just feel like, yeah, that's really getting in the way. And what we do then, we start with something really quite simple that people are already really good at. People are really, really good at, we call it what-ifing, asking what-if questions. And very often people are asking them in a very powerful way, but to torture themselves and limit themselves and keep themselves stuck. So, things like, well, what if it all goes horribly wrong? What if they think that about me? What if they say that about me? What if I mess up? What if I make a mistake? And then it's not being asked in a empowered solution finding kind of tonality. It's like a dread, almost like a weight hanging over our head kind of punishment up front kind of tonality. But it's powerful. They've already proved to themselves how powerful a what if question can be, because they can ruin their day with a what if question. They can halt aspects of their life for months, for years with a what if question. And so let's just harness and acknowledge the skill. That this has been well tried and tested, and it's time to model our own excellence and just flip it. Flip it in the direction that's going to serve us better. And there's something about a more helpful, and I'm using helpful rather than positive, because there is a difference between positive thinking and helpful thinking. Sometimes in the right mode, we could ask even a disaster type question, but we're in an empowered state and with an empowered tonality, and we've got a whole bunch of solutions coming to mind as we're asking the question. That's what project managers do all day long. So it's not just about positive, positive, positive. It's about what's going to help me be resourceful. And a well-placed, helpful what if question is a great enticer of the gates to open. It's quick, and it's we don't have to jump in with both feet yet, because it's just a lovely little possibility. It's like a little bit of bait that we're just throwing into the pond in our brain. It's like, come and have a nibble at this idea, and see which ones are getting nibbled at. So, I could ask a whole stream of, what we do is we tend to give a page of with just what if, what if, what if, what if. We put the unhelpful one at the top. And it's like, if you just gave yourself permission, and this is all that's required really, give yourself permission to just come up with some that would counter the one that seems well established. So if it was, I'm just not good enough, it might just be, things like, what if I'm better than I'm giving myself credit for? What if I think of all the times I've achieved? What if I give more credit to those compliments that I've received over the years? What if there's more resource within me that I haven't tapped into yet than perhaps I've realized? And it'll be different things for different people, of course, but that's just an idea. And some of those will land really well with the person as they write it, as they read it back to themselves, as they throw in a bit of tonality, tantalizingly tempting tonality. Then it's like, that one speaks to me. I can feel my gates being tempted open when I say that one. And that's really what we're after, is that little bit of energy, that little feeling that, wow, if only I believed that. If only that was, true, and it's so different to just getting up, feeling doubt and going, I'm amazing, I'm amazing, I'm amazing. Because when that happens, often there's the tug of war, which is, no, you're not, no, you're not, no, you're not. And that's what's happening inside, because it just feels too much too soon. But if we actually go in there with a stepping stone, just a tantalizing possibility, what if there's more to me than I'm giving myself credit for? What if there's some priceless treasure I haven't unearthed yet? What if I just get started on digging around and seeing what I can release here? It's like slowly just giving those temptations until we notice which ones are really appealing. And our inner team is like sat up and listening. It's like, okay, that sounds good stuff.
Love it. I think just asking that what if question is so powerful to ignite our imagination, to get that little image in our mind of what's possible. And I agree, it's like a sweet little possibility that kind of compels our inner team to probably do some of the more deeper work that we're going to do later on in the process.
Yeah, exactly right. Sometimes people take that as a standalone tool. We've worked with salespeople who have talked themselves out of their sale by the time they get to the meeting, just with unhelpful what ifs circulating. And just to notice, hang on, I'm closing my own gates here. How about I replace that and fill my loops of thought with a more helpful gate opening what if? It means they're arriving with the fullness of self available instead of an impoverished version trickling through the cracks.
Brilliant. So what do we do once we've done the what ifs and we feel some energy around some of them?
Yeah, what we tend to do is take the favorites again, as you're saying, the ones that we feel the energy. And again, just put that maybe on, if we're doing this on notes, we'll just put it on a new page. And the next step is really about satisfying that part of the brain that loves to generate evidence. It's a very cognitive aspect of our being, but it's I don't know if have you ever been in a debate or an argument? Anyone ever been in an argument?
Never, no.
Never. No, absolutely. I knew you wouldn't have, but maybe some of your listeners. But it's interesting, isn't it, when we actually are in a mode where we're feeling passionate about debating for or against something. It's like we're in our flow, and we can generate things from like something we read 10 years ago, or something that happened 10 years ago, and we can dredge it up to the surface to make our point. And so we're going to harness that for the process of giving ourselves giving the belief some more legs, if you like. It's like making it stack up a little more for that part that needs evidence. So the way it goes is we take the what if off the front, and it becomes a statement. So if it was, what if I'm better than I've been giving myself credit for? It would turn into, I'm better than I've been giving myself credit for because. And we put because on the end, and just like, okay, let's just make that a classroom debate. You're going to be arguing for this. I'm better than I've been telling myself because, and it's like, I've achieved things before that were a real stretch. People have actually complimented me on my resourcefulness. I can remember when I made that thing happen that seemed impossible at the time. And it's like we're just building from real evidence. This is from real stuff, but it's giving ourselves permission to shine a light in the direction, because very often we fill our head with the mistakes we made, the things we haven't quite accomplished in the way we wanted. That's like our reference point. It's the wrong filing cabinet, by the way. And we look in just the other direction. Here is all the reasons why this what if actually already stacks up. And it's a beautiful gift to self. And we again ask people as they gather their ideas, to then adopt a tonality and actually get them stood up out their seat and actually like, okay, I've got to now present this. And of course, their inner team is listening. So it's like, I'm better than I've been telling myself because, and while I'm at it, there's this. And by the way, here's another. And it's like, say it you mean it, because this is real evidence you brought to the surface. And, I have the greatest joy of seeing literally the energy change in people as they argue for that. And, it's like their cognitive self is waking up to the fact that there's more. And it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. And it's not the end of the process, but it's just hit that sort of cognitive piece where, evidence put on the table is going to help the cause, help the shift.
Beautiful. And I love the fact that, this process is so simple so far, not necessarily easy for those people that have not done it yet, at least the first time they're doing it, but certainly simple, right? What if, right? Taking whatever are the kind of more depleting thoughts, flipping them around to what if, and then giving some evidence, right? Because I'm sure that the moment we ask ourselves, when was a time when this was true? Maybe even I was a kid, maybe it was, 10 years ago, but, real moments, as you said, that give evidence to that new what if, to that new belief. So what do we do after that? Once we've got a little bit of evidence, what's next?
Yep. So the next step really is making it more experiential, because it's one thing to argue for it in a cognitive way, and there's another level at which we can bring it alive at an experiential kind of point. So it's really about then going into some mental rehearsal of stepping into that version of self, or with that newly forming belief that started with a what if and has now got some arguments in place. And it's just like, okay, I'm going to imagine now in the scenario, what do I want? I'm walking in there, experiencing what it's like to have this new idea circulating in my mind. So I'm better than I've been telling myself, or I'm up to the challenge, or this is easier than I thought. this is more possible than I thought. Or the idea being floated, I deserve the very best, or whatever else it might be. We're taking ourselves in there, in our mind's eye. Some people are very visual with this, and it's like turns into a visualization, and they see themselves and they step into themselves and they experience it from the inside. They feel what they feel, they see what they see, they hear what they hear, all of the senses working. They're having conversations about it as they go. Others are less into that way of mentally rehearsing and may prefer to get a notepad and pen and really just describe in writing the experience in its fullness with sensory information within that. And then some read it back to themselves, some record themselves reading it back to themselves with tonality, some capture themselves on video reading it and play it on a unlisted YouTube clip back to themselves on a daily basis. Whatever works for the person, because it is different individual to individual, but making it, what's the experience like going out into the world, experimenting with this new idea that's becoming more dominant? What am I noticing? What am I feeling? What am I hearing? What am I saying to people? What am I attracting? And so on.
Yeah, so powerful to bring this into kind of the body level, right? To actually feel the feelings of embodying those new thoughts, the moment, right? Like you said, all the smells, the sounds, the taste, what you see and tactically touch and so on. And I love that you brought up videos. Actually, my eldest daughter, who's also a Havening techniques practitioner, she does these mind movies, these infinity mind movies, where she has people kind of specify their goals, right? That outcome, and then she has the helpful affirmations, the music there to really help people feel into their future. And so I think that the idea of either writing it or creating some kind of a video for themselves, I think is really, really powerful.
That's music to my ears. That I keep hearing more about different people doing different things, and it's just like, that's so aligned. Yeah.
And Maya combines it with Havening techniques, and I know you do as well, right? To really help people embody and accelerate the neuroplasticity. And for just as a pause there, since I brought up the word Havening, for those people that have not heard of Havening techniques, would you mind giving us a brief description, and then we'll hop back into the process?
Sure. I mean, by the way, I combine most of my work now with Havening. And, when I'm teaching people, they're Havening along. And basically, it's about being able to use soothing, self-applied touch to change our brain state as we're doing this kind of great work. It just makes it more permissive for the changes to happen. We use it with people who really need to clear some heavy duty stuff, some trauma, overwhelm, and so on. That's how powerful it is, first of all. But for daily practices, wow, what we're doing is we're applying touch to the face, to the shoulders and the arms, and the palms of the hands. I mean, this is timeless wisdom that neuroscience is catching up with. Doctors Ron and Stephen Rudin, the co-founders of Havening, they've been able to capture the neuroscience behind something that really we instinctively know how to soothe ourselves and others. We put a hand on someone's shoulder. We wring our hands if we're a bit nervous. We put our head in our hands. Our body knows, but when we see the effects that it can have in the brain, it's like we can harness it and really put it to good work. So it's just beautiful to hear that these things are being combined with Havening. So as we're doing our what ifing, as we're arguing for, as we're mentally rehearsing, just getting that brain state that's like a biological thumbs up to all of this as we go.
Thank you, Tony, for sharing that with our audience, because it can absolutely, help to accelerate this beautiful process of changing their limiting, unhelpful beliefs for good. And so, what do we do after we've done this kind of whether it's visualization or journaling, and we've had an experience of these wives?
I mean, to a certain extent, there's some repetition around these aspects. So, the noticing the degree to which it's taking root, and do I need to do some more what ifs to support that, and then argue for some other points towards, and then mentally rehearse those into the mix, that can be an enjoyable process of just like nurturing and watering those germinating seeds, if you like. The one that is the final step in our 6-step process is about, we call it roles. And it comes from people modeling their own excellence. And I don't know, I'm sure your listeners will relate to their own examples of this, where someone is naturally more stepping into their best self with the gates open and like the bar is raised, and they're naturally in a very purposeful state. And examples are actually, I mean, I work with a lot of therapists, coaches, trainers, people who are in some way supporting others. And when they step into that mode, it's like they put a different hat on, and the gates are thrown open. It's like, okay, you're having everything. It's like, every bit of wisdom is available. Every great question they can pull out of the bag, it's masterful. And it's like, wow, this person has just accessed the whole of their amazing treasure. And sometimes they forget to take it with them outside of that role. They take that hat off and their jacket, and it's like, oh, oops, I slammed the gates when I left. And it's all transferable. And there are, thinking about your listeners, some will be managers, some will be leaders, some will be leading meetings, some will be helping the new person who's joined in the office, some will be helping a friend, some will be a role model to a younger brother or sister, or to their own children, or to their nephews and nieces, or whoever it is. And there's something about stepping into some kind of role model mode which raises that bar. And it's like gives a level of purpose that is big enough for us to throw open the gates very naturally. And I can remember when I first came across this. I mean, I think it was more than 20 years ago. I lose track, but it was someone who I knew very well. I knew she had a phobia of wasps. And, it was full on, arms would be flailing, hair flying, she'd be running and screaming, and everyone kind of knew. And then there was a particular occasion where I got to observe her, and she's walking towards Wasp, armed with a little stick-it, opens a window and wafts it out, saying it's only a wasp. And I was like, whoa, there's something quite interesting going on here. And the missing piece of information that you haven't got here is that at the time she was a teacher of a class of young kids. And it was enough. What happened is a wasp flew in the window, and some of the kids started getting really upset about it on the back row. And it was a big enough role aspect for her. I'm the teacher. They're looking to me for reassurance that it raised the bar, opened the gates, and she pulled out of the bag resources almost she didn't know she had in that context. Now, I was curious afterwards. I said, look, how much of that was like putting on a very brave face and how much of that was genuine? And she paused for a moment and said, do you know, there's a surprising amount of genuineness in that shift. Of course, I was feeling more inside than they were seeing, but actually I wasn't feeling what I normally feel when I'm like not in that role and I'm running around screaming. It was genuinely different. And it's like there's a permission that goes with stepping into a role that allows us to pull more out of the bag. Over the years, we've seen this a lot. We've done some weird and wacky kind of workshops over the years. We do fire walking and walking on broken glass and things, all these weird and wonderful things. And it's not for everybody, but there's something about where I see someone in hesitation in front of, say, walking on fire. And then there's a moment where we're not pushy with it. It's like, let's just notice what's going on here. You decide for yourself whether it's for you or not. But one of the things that we notice is that when we get them connected to a particular role, like say if there was someone who mattered to you, who needed to see you access confidence right now, for whatever reason, how does that change things? And quite honestly, sometimes we nearly have to pull them back. You see the shift, they bring the person to mind, and it may be their child or nephew or niece, or it might be a family member or a friend. And it's like, if they need to see me in this moment, and it's not like I have to put a brave face on, it's like you see the shift happen. You see the shift in stature, you see this shift in readiness, and they go and they just do it. They just do it and they make it happen. And then they've got another piece of evidence in mind of their greatness. And so this is really about, with that, if I just go back to the original story with the lady who was scared of wasps, the solution we agreed upon as an experiment for her was that she would now connect into that role. Anytime she encountered a wasp, she would imagine her class of kids with her, whether it would be on a family picnic, whether it be, in an isolated room in her own home. It didn't matter. It was like, you're going to imagine that class of kids and they're looking to you for reassurance. And she just played around with it. And it wasn't perfect immediately, but and we hadn't done the other steps in the belief change either. This was something we just did in isolation. But it was what inspired me to put it in, because it's like it provides you with those final real life pieces of evidence that nail it. It's like in this role, I do stuff. In this role, I make things happen. And it just reinforces, you've got more magnificence than you've been giving yourself credit for. So I would really invite your listeners to really just think, where am I already pulling out my best flow states? Who am I with where I'm being a role model or an example to someone, where I'm accessing my resources because it matters to those other people, actually. That's often one of them. There are other exceptions with caution, I would say. One is that some will more easily access this if they imagined, who would be the person by my side who believes in me, that brings out naturally the best. Oh yeah, when that old school teacher, used to be by my side, I know that I had more that I could offer. And so we could do that version. But the last one is the caution one, which is for some, and we need to know a bit about their personality type here, but for some, it would be imagining their greatest doubter in the room. And there's a kind of, let me show you. And you can imagine we've got to use that one with caution. But for some people, that is, I've used this with the firewalking, for example, where I knew enough about them. And it's like, if that doubter that you told me about was here, stood here now, saying you can't do it, and it's like, whoa, they were off. It was all they needed in order to pull out of the bag that resource. So that's for the few, but it's worth noticing that one.
Yeah, and so powerful, because and I've even heard from clients that they've done certain things because they were told that they couldn't, right? That was the thing that ignited them to do it, even though it was hard and uncomfortable and they didn't know what they were doing.
Yes.
And as you said, having or imagining somebody that truly believes in us or has in the past shown that level of support and belief in us is so powerful. And it also reminds us of how important it is for us to believe in others, to help them change their beliefs for good, because it really does make a difference. We're all connected in that way. And so, Tony, I'm so grateful to you for doing this important work in the world and for taking your time to be here with us. You've taken us through a process that I sense, for those people that are willing to go through it, and of course, read your books and engage more with you, they can get some tremendous help to release some things that may be holding them back from accessing their own genuine, beautiful treasure. And so how can people learn more about you and Julie's work?
Well, we've got a couple of websites, but also I'd like to send for your listeners a couple of links so they can download a free PDF version of the two books, because then it's super accessible. So there's the belief one and there's the pink bucket thinking. They go nicely together, actually. So I'll send you those specific links. If they're interested generally in what we're doing, our website, aha-success.com. aha-success.com. And also, easy to remember this one, pinkbucketthinking.com. That's another one they can delve in. There's some free videos on there as well that are matched to the chapters of the book. So there's lots of good free stuff, and I would really encourage them to start there and really see what they can achieve for themselves. And let me know. I'd love to hear how they're getting on with that.
Beautiful. And I imagine the way to get in touch with you is it through the website, or is there some other way?
Yeah, through the website's great. That's probably the easiest way to find our contact details. Yeah.
And I know you've got some tremendous trainings. I know you also train on havening techniques. And as you mentioned, you've got all kinds of wonderful corporate trainings for sales teams and so on. So once again, thank you so much for being here, for sharing these important steps with us. And I wish you and Julie all the best in the world.
Thank you. Could I mention also, for those who are interested in the havening side, there's also the headquarters website, which is havening.org, and there's global trainings at havening.
That's right. There are many, many trainers around the world. And of course, you have trained many of those trainers. And so really grateful for all of that work as well that you do. It's such a wonderful technique and really, really works well. So once again, thank you so much, Tony.
Thank you.